Good morning. How's everybody doing? My name is Shawn Johnson, and welcome to the Millennials in Recovery panel. So, first and foremost, I am a drug addict, and my clean date is March 5th of 2014. Thank you so much. This is my second year hosting the Millennials in Recovery panel. And like all of the panelists up here, we are all younger Oxford House residents and alumni. And our goal today is to talk about the trends, talk about the resources that we have found or developed, and the various opportunities that are available for younger people in Oxford House. So I first wanted to break down kind of what is a millennial, right? I think there are a lot of definitions out there. So we have this handy dandy slide up here, which kind of breaks down all the panelists. So we're going to go through it and kind of see what our audience is right now. So the first one is the builders generation, and that's from 1901 to 1927. Do we have anyone in this room today from that generation? By show of hands. We got one. I don't believe you, but okay. And then the next, we have the silent generation, which is from 1928 to 1945. So that's going to be people based 73 through 90 years old. Anybody here from that generation? Okay. And then the next, this is one of the more famous generations, the baby boomers. These are people born from 1946 to 1964 by show of hands. We got one. We got Marty Walker. Baby boomers. Hey, baby boomers. What's up, guys? Welcome. Boom.
What's up?
Then we got Generation X. Okay, we got one already. That's people born from 1965 to 1980. So they'd be 38 to 53 by show of hands. Okay, we got a few more Generation X. Welcome, guys. Thank y'all for coming. And then we have the most self-important generation, myself included, right? The Millennials. People born from 1981 to 1996. That's people 22 through 37 years old by show of hands. Who's here? Welcome, my people. Welcome. And then we got the post-millennials, the people that grew up with iPhones and tablets in their hands from day one. People born 1997 through the present, so 0 to 21 years old. Anyone 21 years old or younger? Hey, hey, welcome. Welcome. All right, so now that I've reminded everyone about how old they are, let's open up this panel. So we're going to try and leave some extra time at the end for any questions. So any questions that you may have, please hold to the end. So first up, we met last night and we decided that we are going to go from youngest to oldest. So first up, somebody from my home city who I've seen grow up in the Oxford community and has done amazing things in our community in Austin, Texas. Is the one and only resident, Raquel Azua.
Even on stage, I'm tripping. Hi, everybody. My name is Raquel Azua. I am a person in long-term recovery, and I think y'all have heard that all weekend. You know, I'm sure y'all know what that means, but my clean date is January 21st of 2015. Today's my 21st birthday. And I don't say that to gloat or make y'all jealous of my age. I'm saying that because 21 is a rite of passage for a lot of young people. That's the age where it's legal to get turned up. And I through the steps and through Oxford House, I'm here at the World Convention. Yeah. Right where I want to be. So obviously I found recovery very young. And I found substances and opioids very young. So it was very difficult, to try to maintain and try to, get clean that young. I got clean when I was 17. I moved into Oxford at that age as well. And it was a very, very, very extraordinary experience. So in the ways that I tried to get clean, it was through in and out of treatment centers and institutions and stuff. And I was kind of always told to mind somebody, and I had this kind of rebellious, attitude. It was very difficult for me, to be this young and then go to meetings and not identify as an addict, but relate to what everyone is saying, and everyone is like substantially older than me. So it was very hard for me to find somewhere where I fit, and it was, as an addict, I always tried to find the differences, not the similarities, and my age was the biggest excuse for me not to stay. So it was one of the biggest excuses to run. But luckily in my area, there was a few resources for young people, such as PDAP. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of the Palmer Drug Abuse Program. I know it's in Houston, I know it's in San Antonio, Rise Recovery. That was what I started off with. I was introduced to that, and I was going to their younger group, and I was kind of told in treatment to not go there because, well, you're gonna be with other young kids, and that's an opportunity to probably be in the wrong crowd and go score. And the addict mentality I had was, yes, other people my age that are, I just kind of saw that as maybe an opportunity to score, and it wasn't that at all. I went to my first meeting there, and there was actually young people talking about sponsorship, talking about going through step work, and I was just like, what is this? And I tried to run from that, and the community there kind of let me in and open arms, but I still wasn't ready yet. I was first introduced into recovery at 13 through probation and, all the trouble that I would get into and stuff. But eventually when I became ready, I knew where to go. And through them, they found me an Oxford house to go into, and I didn't really have faith that I was gonna get in because of my age. And, I just didn't have faith in myself that much at that time. But luckily, this house saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and accepted me. And it was a trip. I remember my first night when I got accepted. I was like looking around my room, and I was like, what did I get myself into? What is this? But I kept that faith, and I took that suggestion from a sponsor to just kind of keep that faith and keep going with it, and it was very difficult to learn I actually had to learn how to grow up, I knew what it was like to live on the streets. I thought that was being tough. I thought that was being, a badass, but like learning how to pay bills and working a job and paying rent, that was like really scary to me. That was really growing up. But there were other residents in that house that were doing the same and were learning the same, so they were kind of growing up with me. It didn't matter what all our differences were, we all had that common bond, And at that time, though, I was probably the youngest person everywhere I went. All the chapter meetings, all the house meetings. I was always the baby of the house, and I really didn't like that because, I just didn't want to be baby. I wanted to be seen as the same. I wanted to be seen as this adult, and it took time, but I kept sticking around no matter what, because my recovery was more important than what other people thought of me. My recovery was more important than, and I was willing to do whatever it took, and that included growing up. So time went on, and, I became alumni, and I came back, and I've been living in Austin for about, 9 months, and through living in Oxford and building that foundation for myself, I was able to finish high school. I was able to become a recovery coach for young people. I was able to work at PDAP. So somebody giving that experience, strength and hope for me, learned how to give it away freely because it was freely given to me. So my hope is to give this message to young people that it doesn't matter how, whether we have those reservations of I haven't reached my bottom yet or I haven't gone that bad, you don't have to go any worse. But I don't want to be, like saying that you haven't seen anything dark either. Because that was told to me too, was if only I would quit at your age, or I was just starting when you stopped, And it was like, well, you don't know the things I've been through. And I'm very open about my recovery, and I'm more, I like to tell my story and stuff, but I'm just saying that we all have our walks of life and our experiences and stuff, and it makes our recovery 100% valid anyways. So I just want to give that hope to you guys that we can recover at any age. And it's a miracle that you can recover young, I feel like. We're all miracles at our own times. So my suggestion for, if you guys are newcomers or you guys are just residents that are really young, just keep sticking around. There's hope no matter what. And it really is kind of surreal to be growing up. Like I learned how to drive in Oxford. Like it was really, it was pretty funny. That's how much I was growing up in Oxford. And if I didn't have that, I don't think I would be here. So I really am grateful for this organization that gave me a chance that I didn't really have if I was still living at home, because but I had other residents being there for me, and that unity and that family that, we stand by on that model. The unity is such a vital thing, and it really did show in my recovery, and for the residents that are, older, and you have people that are young, let them have their experience. We all have our experiences, we all follow our paths, and we all need to learn in our own way. A lot of us have, for me, my experience is I was babied, residents tried to baby me, tried to be my parent, tried to lecture me and give me advice, which is great. I'm open-minded today, but I still have to have my own experiences. So we all have parents. So that's all I can really say on that. And it takes time, people were able to see past my age now, and now that I'm gotten a little bit older and stuff, but I don't know, it's just, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to share my story, and if you guys have any questions and stuff like that, I'm here, I'm all around. I'm the one that's been screaming, vote for Dave. So, but yeah, I'll see y'all at the banquet tonight, and just kept it short and sweet. There's hope for everybody, no matter how old you are. Young is definition of young is young at heart, right? So we're all millennials here in a way. That's all I got, thanks.
Great job, Rocky. Rocky got clean when she was 17 years old. That's crazy. I got clean when I was 25, and I think most of us, obviously, we got clean when we were very young. So it's not about really how much you've drank, how much you've used. For me, it was the emotional bottom that I hit at the age of, 24, and then continue to hit until I was 25. So next up, we have an alumna from the great state of Oregon, Pacific Northwest, Katie Moore.
Hi guys, I'm Katie Moore. I'm an addict. I am from Greensboro, North Carolina. I was born and raised. It's okay. It's okay. It helped me not be nervous for a second. So, I was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a lot of fun there until it stopped being fun. And then I went to treatment and took some suggestions, and I changed my people, my places, and my things. April 15th, 2017 was the last time I put a mood or mind-altering chemical in my body. I grew up with my mom being bipolar and my dad identifying as an alcoholic. So my childhood was very unstable and very unpredictable. And I remember getting into treatment, and my counselor asked me, what's one thing you want from recovery? And I said, stability. That's what I've always wanted. That's what I was always searching for. When I was living on the streets and with different men here or there, women that would let me crash on their couch. And I begged my parents for treatment for a few months, and they, after I called them when I was in the hospital and said I was dead in the morgue, and my mom snapped me back into reality real quick, they finally allowed me to go to treatment. And I was talking to my counselor, and I had said that this was the best place ever. Like, I just wanted to stay in treatment for the rest of my life because all these women, I'd never received unconditional love from women before. And the women in my treatment center, I was the youngest, of course. The next closest to my age was 35, 40 range. And I never experienced that wake up in the morning, give you a hug, here's coffee, or wake up in the morning, how did you sleep last night? That was a foreign concept to me. And I'd spoken to my counselor, and she was like, well, maybe an Oxford house is for you. And I was like, no, that's not for me. I had in my mindset that it was this awful place that wasn't for people like me. I wasn't really a drug addict. I just blacked out every night, or if it was sunny outside, I would drink. I wasn't still a drug addict. I haven't accepted that or become open-minded yet. And we had mock meetings in my treatment center, and I did the meeting, and the woman, she spoke of how she was happy and she had found friends, and friends was a very loose word for me, because friends meant that you had the drugs I wanted, or friends meant that you were going to let me sleep on your couch, or you had something I wanted. And so, or if we met, we were best friends. Like that whole night, that's my best friend. But if you looked at me the wrong way or talked to me the wrong way, I'm going to fight her that night. So I didn't understand what friendship meant. And so I went up to her and I talked to her afterwards, and she was 21 at the time, and I was 21 in treatment, and I had my 22nd birthday in treatment. And she had said that it was definitely hard for her, but it was the best thing she ever did was live with 7 other women. So I ended up seeing her at a young people's meeting a few days later, and she looked at me and she goes, "You have an interview at my house at 8 o'clock on Monday." I said, "I didn't ask for an interview at your house." And she was like, "No, but you need to have the interview at my house on Monday." So I went to the interview, and they were like women laying on the floor. They had coffee. It was 8 o'clock at night, and they were drinking coffee. And if you know me, you know I love coffee. And so I'm like, okay, I'm sold. Y'all have a coffee maker. They had a Keurig. That was all I needed. So I interviewed. They accepted me. I met my best friend that night, my absolute best friend, and I got accepted the next day, or a few days later I moved in, and we spent all day together, me and 2 other women, and we woke up, we drank coffee, and I've smoked cigarettes now that I moved in to an Oxford house, so that wasn't really part of my plan in the beginning, but smoked cigarettes, drank coffee on the back porch, and that was the most genuine laughter I've ever had, and the best experience of my entire life, and I'll never forget that day. We almost all of us fell asleep in the living room that night, and that house held me through a lot of pain. I had to make some tough choices with my dad. I had to make some tough choices with realizing that my mom and I don't have to have a relationship for me to love her. And that house loved me through that whole experience. It held me. The women in that house held me. When I was sick, I took a lot of medication, active addiction, but I didn't take cold and like sinus medication, to make me better when I was in active addiction. And I didn't know what to take, I didn't know what was good for me or what was going to make me pop for a drug test. And so I called the women in my house, and they talked me through what medication to get, how often I take it. I didn't know that there was a little part on the back of it that said take 2 times every 6 hours. I know that now, because I would have drank the whole bottle, and that house, I will never be able to give back to that house what that house gave to me. I held almost every position besides chore coordinator in that house. I learned how to do chores. I didn't know that when you had a house, you actually clean that house, and to make it a little bit easier so you're not cleaning all on one day, you clean 2 or 3 times a week, and it's okay for someone to go behind you and be like, you know what, you just didn't do that chore as well as you could have. You can do it better. I thought that they were bossing me around. They wanted to tell me, that was their goal, was to tell me what to do. The more seasoned women in the house. Little did I know that was them giving me what they got. And I think that's something that I did struggle with a lot in my house, was realizing that women that had been there a little bit longer weren't telling me what to do, they were teaching me how to do it. And I think that's something that being a younger woman now, trying to teach even older women that are new to the house how to do things, it's it's out of respect, and I don't think that a lot of it's understood that way sometimes, is that someone taught me how to do it, and just because I'm younger than you doesn't mean that I can't teach you how to do something too. Then that house, that house gave me everything that it could give me, and I gave that house everything I could give that house. It was time for someone else to come into that house, and I ended up moving to another Oxford house, and I helped support that house for a little while. And at a certain point, I learned how to keep a checkbook. I learned how to write a check. I learned how to clean my room, or someone would tell me that my room needed to be clean and that my life was becoming a little unmanageable. It was time for me to move out, and that was one of the scariest things that has happened to me in Oxford, is having to no longer have those drug tests whenever I come home and act a little funny, or drink too many Red Bulls, and they're like, that's becoming unmanageable, and that house held me through moving out, and supporting me and loving me and thanking me for giving them what I got. And so I did move out of an Oxford house. I've been out of Oxford for 2 months now, and I'm about to celebrate 18 months clean, and I can never thank Oxford enough. I went to the state convention, and now I'm here, and I hope I never stop learning. I'm just very grateful to be here. I'm grateful y'all are here, and that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Katie. I got the place wrong. All right, next from the great state of Saskatchewan, Mexico. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to get this one wrong. I'm not going to get this one wrong because I saw her amazing support team supporting her and walking her through this. From the great state of Tennessee, we have Caitlin Cusman. Come on up, Caitlin.
Hey y'all, my name's Caitlin, and I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. That's where I grew up, but I live in Oxford and Chattanooga. My sobriety date is November 1st, 2017, so I'm coming up on my year. So growing up, I did everything early. I started school early, I finished school early, I got married early, I had a baby early, I started using drugs early. So all by the time of 17, I was pregnant and married and a junkie. And that became my lifestyle. And being young and trying to get sober, mentally it was a struggle because I started going to meetings when I was like 17, 18, and I went to AA. And there was no way I could be an addict or an alcoholic because I wasn't 21. Like it's just not possible. That's not a thing. And so like just admitting that was an issue, and seeing all people my age going out and partying on the weekends and with their friends, like it's acceptable. That's what people do. And so that's what I thought I could do too. But where people would just go and have a drink on a Friday night at a party, I was taking alcohol into school every morning in my orange juice. And seeing those differences is what I focused on, and not what the similarities were. And like I'd see people in their 30s and 40s, and they've lost their family and their career and their house, and I didn't lose any of that. But I wasn't old enough and to that point in my life to even get any of those things to lose. I eventually did lose like my family and the people that I cared about, because they were really good at not enabling me, and they wouldn't let me get away with the stuff that other people I knew could get away with. And so I ended up homeless, young, and on my own. And even though I'm young, there's a lot of stuff I've been through. I buried my husband at 22 from a drug overdose. And my best friend, I buried him a month before that. And like being 24 and knowing 22 people that have died of an overdose it's serious. And I knew I just couldn't do that because I was gonna be one of those people. I wasn't gonna make it to 30 if I kept using the way I was using. And I've been through treatment and in and out of jail. It's awesome that you're here on your 21st birthday, because that was the first time I went to jail. It's the first sober birthday I had, but I was in jail. So going through treatment, and I was always the baby. I was the baby of AA and the baby of treatment, and everyone's like, oh, it's cute, that's good. Like, I'm glad you're here, but you're not gonna make it. Like, you're not done. There's no way you can be done. You're so young. And it was discouraging, but it didn't stop me. It gave me a reason to relapse a time or two, but I came back. And when I got out of jail this last time, I moved into Oxford. I wasn't court ordered. It wasn't for probation. It wasn't for my family. It was, if I didn't do something, I was gonna die, and I knew that. And so I got out of jail and I up and moved different cities and moved into Oxford, and on December 18th of last year, and that was one of the best days of my life. And just like I did everything else early, I got involved from the get-go and started holding positions in chapter within the first month of moving in, and just giving it my all. And like Oxford, there's so many opportunities, not just for like young people, but for everyone. But for me to be in a house with other women, to learn how to grow up and to adult, like go to work every day and pay my bills and my rent and clean and cook, not just eat ramen noodles. Like I'm growing up with these women. Like, I might not have my family, but the women I live with and in my city, they are my family, and I do everything with them. My best friend, we've been all over the state of Tennessee for state association meetings, and now we're here, and it's really cool to have that support system and to have someone that knows where you're coming from and knows who you are and doesn't judge you for it and loves you anyway and can love you through the growing pains of recovery and of life. And it's probably one of the greatest things Oxford has given me, is a support system and that woman role model in my life, regardless if they're my age or they're still role models of who I want to be. And that's something I never would have had if it wasn't for Oxford. And it's just given me such an opportunity to grow into a woman. And I'm not a girl anymore, I'm a woman. And just to have a sober and happy, healthy life, as normal as recovering addicts can be. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not being the norm. I'm weird, and that's okay, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was an amazing story. How many people have lost somebody in the past year from this disease? I lost my best friend last month. Drug addiction has no discrimination. It kills everyone, and the millennial generation are one of the hardest hit, right? So that's why it's our responsibility as millennials in recovery, or just people in recovery, to take this shit seriously, have fun, and find a purpose, and bring the next person along with us. Because there's nothing but death out there. So, okay, so next we have an outreach, a former resident from Louisiana, now outreach in South Carolina, Mr. Wesley Ford.
Hello, I'm Wesley. My sobriety date is February 14th of 2015. Yeah. So, believe it or not, I really don't do well with speaking in front of a lot of people like this, but I'm gonna do it. So I moved into Oxford House, Old Hammond in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, whenever I was 20 years old. I was the youngest person in my house. I got lucky and I didn't have to share a room with anyone, which is really cool to me because I don't like doing that, and then I didn't want to do that with a really old guy either. And these lights are like really bright. Yeah. Okay. So when I moved into an Oxford house, I moved straight out of my mom's, who is my best friend now. But she always took care of me. She always did everything for me. She did my laundry. She cleaned my room. She cleaned up behind me. She did everything. I didn't have to do anything. She enabled the hell out of me. So I grew up thinking that that's what her job was going to be for the rest of my life, was taking care of me. And so whenever I moved into an Oxford house, my mom was paying my rent. She was buying me groceries. She wanted to come and pick up my laundry and bring it back to her house to wash it, but I wouldn't let her do all that. But I did take all of her money, though. Anytime she would buy me anything, I would let her. And then my house kind of like started catching on to what my mom was doing. And I was working and everything, like I could afford it, but she wanted to do it, I guess. So I let her. In my house, in a house meeting, they like came at me crazy because they told me that my mom couldn't do that anymore because she was enabling me. And I was so in my feelings behind that. Like, who are you to tell me who I can and take money from? Like, but they told me that if they found out that my mom paid my rent anymore, that they were going to put me on contract and all this crazy stuff. And I don't like being on contract. So I started forcing myself to save my money to pay my weekly rent, my weekly EES. And I didn't ever clean up after myself either. I sucked at doing chores. At the beginning, I wouldn't do my chore. I would just pay the fine for not doing my chore. And they sat me down again, and they put me on a contract that time. Because I didn't live at my mom's anymore, so they weren't gonna pick up after me that I had to do my chore. So I started doing my chore and I started paying my rent. I started becoming a little bit more responsible than I'd ever been before in my life. And then the older people started moving out, newer people started coming in, and then before I knew it, I was the seasoned member of this Oxford house. And I didn't get involved in the chapter until I was about a little over a year sober, because I really didn't think that I was the youngest person in the room always, so I didn't really think that I had anything to give to the chapter until I went into a chapter meeting and there was no one willing to do anything. and my outreach worker at the time asked me to be chapter chair, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm fixing to be chapter chair. I'm the youngest chapter chair probably. I was so proud of myself for becoming chapter chair. And then it just escalated from there. I really grew up a lot whenever I started getting involved with Oxford House and not just worrying about my house. I started taking on a lot of responsibility from other parts of the chapter, from other houses and other chapters, because I'm from Baton Rouge, and we had 3 different chapters in there. So I just kind of I had so much energy back then, and I don't know where it all went because I have none now, but I was just like running and gunning the streets of BR all the time, just going from Oxford House to Oxford House, just doing whatever anybody asked me to do. And being in recovery and being so young is, I feel sometimes when I'm telling older people how old I am and how old I was whenever I got sober, I feel like they minimize my experiences for me to even be eligible for recovery. And I don't remember who said it earlier, but someone said, let me check my time. Okay. Someone said that there was, someone had told them that they didn't even start, really partying until however old this person was whenever they got sober. And I've been told that multiple times as well. But the thing that I respond to those people with is, you're like 20 or 30 years older than I am. So the drugs and the alcohol and stuff that you did back then wasn't as strong and potent as it is now. And if I would have continued on for another month, I probably would have died. So that's why I got sober at 20 years old. I spent my 21st birthday in an Oxford house. I was laying in my bed waiting for the clock to strike midnight, and in Louisiana, you have to be 21 to buy lottery tickets. And that's all I wanted to do, was just go and buy a lottery ticket from the gas station by my house. So I'm laying in bed waiting for the clock to strike midnight, and then I started thinking about those little bitty bottles of Taco vodka that are $2. And I was like, I'm gonna buy one of them too, because I've never been able to do that either. And I was just gonna get it and then throw it away. That was the plan in my head, and that would not have happened if I would have went to the store and got it. But at 12:01, I heard knocking on my bedroom door, and all of the guys in my house, I had just moved in the house too, I wasn't in there but for a few months. They threw me a surprise birthday party at midnight and stayed up with me hours after that, until I went to sleep. Well, I went to sleep, so I didn't go and get drunk on my 21st birthday. It was pretty cool. I had a lot more that I was planning on saying, but whenever you get up here, all that kind of goes out. So I'm almost out of time, so I'm gonna go ahead and get off of here. But thanks for listening, and yeah, I'll see y'all tonight.
Thanks, Wesley. All right, next we have a resident from the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Austin Connell.
All right. My name is Austin Connell. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is I haven't had a drink or a drug since April 16th, 2016. I'd like all the other stories I've heard so far up here in the relations side of the things. I was always noticed as the baby in recovery at a very young age. At the age of 14, I started getting into drugs, and it progressed. By the age of 18, started picking up charges, going to jail. At an early age, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there, my grandparents, the only two people aside from my aunt in my entire family, which I have a pretty big family, are recovering drug addicts. My grandma was my enabler. She took me to my first meeting, NA meeting, when I was 14 or 15. In Bend, Oregon, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, was only like 30,000, 40,000 people. Right now it's right over 100,000. So it's a small town. And with 3 generations deep of my family living in that town, everybody knows everybody. And my grandparents, they did the whole NA scene. They got involved, they ran the meetings. So when I walked into a meeting my first time, I was introduced to all these people. Mainly all older people, 15, 20 years plus clean. All I remember being early in recovery was that it was very uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I didn't accept it. I didn't have a problem with drugs because I only had a problem at that time with either marijuana or cocaine, or it was always different. It always switched for me. I was never doing everything all at the same time. It was always going from one drug to the next. So I wasn't that drug addict because I never did everything like everyone else was talking about all the time. I felt like I could never relate to anybody being early in recovery, mainly because I was kicking it with all the old timers. Work the steps or die, motherfucker. I never felt comfortable with that statement. I didn't think I was gonna die. I was very rebellious, very resentful, and I kind of held on to that. Nobody could tell me anything. So it was very hard for me to be told by all these older people what to do all the time. My first Oxford House experience was actually in 2009. I believe it was 2009. It was early 2009. I got accepted into this house. I was afraid I was gonna go to jail for a long time because I was out on a downward departure. I got in trouble again. I had 4 years hanging over my head. So when I got into this house, I didn't have a goal or plan of staying clean. However, in the stay of this house, I got my first kind of taste of what Oxford is, and the group of guys that I lived with there were all older. At that time, there were a lot of older people, 40, 50 plus range, living in all the Oxford houses. I think there's 6 or 7 houses at the time. Currently, we have 8 houses. With that said, me not wanting to stay clean and everything, my experience, though, being in the Oxford houses, I was picked on a lot. I was always told that I wasn't going to stay clean, that I was a young person in recovery. I wasn't going to make it. I might as well just go back out. There was actually another house of older guys that made bets on me, which is unfortunate. There was a point in time where I felt so uncomfortable. It was like, that's my reason for walking out. Like I said, I wasn't going to stay clean anyways, so I'm not blaming that on me walking out. But further on, when I got clean this last time, I was done. After 2 years of methamphetamine use on the streets, homeless, lifeless, no family, no friends, no nothing. Nobody was telling me what to do at that point because I didn't have anybody. I was done. I walked into a meeting, which I knew where all the meetings were, and I submitted, hey, I need help. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. I don't know what direction I'm trying to go in or what I'm trying to do. At that moment, I didn't care what anybody thought of me. And that was the first time in my life where I felt like I was actually gonna succeed. I walked into that meeting knowing I was gonna stay clean for a long time. I didn't know how it was gonna happen though. That's what I had to do. I felt so uncomfortable, but I knew being uncomfortable was right where I needed to be. Everything that I've been asked to do as far as service work, I've done. That's kind of why I'm standing here. I was asked to do this panel and I was like, all right, let's do it. I didn't want to, but that's how my whole recovery has gone. My experience in the house, this last time I was 8 days clean, when I went to this house meeting, and with my experience living in Bend my whole life, a lot of people have seen me come and go, and there were a few people in the house that seen me come and go in and out of jail, in and out of treatment, and I walked into the house fully expecting not to get voted in. There were like 12 people interviewing for the one position, and I got accepted that night, and it completely changed my life. I knew when I laid down on that twin mattress on the floor that night next to the older guy who was like 56, roughly, snores really loud. I did not care. I was comfortable. I knew I was gonna stay clean for a long time at that moment. Now, in my first year being there, I was that person that was always up everybody else's ass, not really paying attention to my own behaviors, and I got called out on that. I never got put on contract because the house was, I believe, they just kind of talked about it, sat you down, kind of drilled you with all these words and whatever. And it was cool. I finally felt like someone cared about me, or at least at that moment, I was finally willing to listen. I was never willing to listen before, and I think that's why I always had such a hard time with the older people or being a young person in recovery, that I never wanted to listen to what anybody had to say. I was right all the time. And I still have that side of me. That side of me has been with me my whole life. To go a little bit further, I don't have much time, but I was at the Leadership Summit. It was not this last year, but the year before. I was planning on moving out of Oxford because I had it all figured out. I was a little over a year clean. I was gonna get into my own place, do my own thing or whatever, and then I went to the Leadership Summit, and one of the speakers at the Leadership Summit inspired me to get involved with Oxford. I've never been really involved with Oxford other than just going to a couple of chapter meetings or whatever. And that just lit the fire under my ass, and I started getting more involved. Started going to the chapter meetings every time there was a chapter meeting, talking to people wanting to reach out, kind of do a little bit more, and within a couple of months, I got the chapter chair position dropped in my lap, and ran with it. That, just having that experience was awesome. I felt like I belonged somewhere. I felt like I was finally important. And I ended up staying in Oxford. I went to the World Convention last year and made a goal at the World Convention to open up a bunch of houses. Well, a bunch of houses didn't happen. One house happened. And I moved into that house as a core member and helped assist with opening it up. And that was by far the most amazing experience. Also want to give credit to Jeremy, my other roommate, because he's my other core member of that house when we first opened it. If there is anything more rewarding in this whole Oxford life is opening up a new house. It is like the most amazing thing. I don't really know what else to say because I got kind of nervous getting up here and talking. I love you all, and I'll be here for the rest of my life in recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Thanks, man. All right, and our final panelist is somebody who was on this panel with Wesley and myself last time. Alumnus from the great state of Louisiana, Jeremy Weatherspoon.
Hey family, I'm Jeremy, and I am a grateful recovering addict. My sobriety date is April 5th of 2013, and for that, I'll always be grateful. Now, personally, I am adverse adverse to titles, to labels, right? And so let me just go through some of the statistics and labels that I have, right? So I'm a minority, right? I'm homosexual, right? I'm HIV positive. I'm an addict. I'm a millennial, right? What I feel those things say about me is that it limits my chances or my ability to succeed. That's the connotation that I get when I hear someone label me. You know what I mean? Why must I, meet that label? Why must I be confined to that structure, right? As addicts and alcoholics, we are very creative. But when we get into recovery, we're all very immature, right? And I don't think it's just something that is unique to millennials, right? I think everybody that comes in the house have lost their ability to take care of self, their ability to wash their own clothes or clean up after themselves or pay their bills on time or actually wake up and go to work, or like we've lost all of those things. And so sometimes I feel like we're all growing together, like we're all kids and we're all trying to get our lives together and on the right path. I never really identified, again, with millennials. I really never actually thought about it, to be quite honest, because I was always the youngest because I was always going for the oldest. Now look, don't talk about my relationships, right? But my idea was you want to surround yourselves with individuals that have what you want. And that's kind of how I do my recovery as well. Like I want, if someone's attractive as far as their recovery is concerned, they're doing things in the community, being selfless, they have a strong program, they're meeting with their sponsors, they're chairing meetings. I want to be with that person, male or female. I want to be by you. I want to get what your energy, I want to take some of that so I can, try to achieve that, right? Well, when I was younger, if you had a nice house, if you had a nice car, if you had lots of money in the bank, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to get next to you too. Generally, those people were older. And so I started identifying with that older generation. I've always wanted to be Generation X. Ooh, sounds so nice. But I'm only 34, and so I'm at the cusp, around the cusp of millennials and Generation X. But what I've noticed, because some things about millennials, right? Most of us grew up in homes that had computers. Now, mind you, mine was very much dial-up. It was very much AOL, Welcome, you've got mail. Now, I used to love that because if somebody calls you when your dial-up was kicking on, it would shut you down real quick. Like, who the hell is calling? But most of us had computers in the classroom, so we had computer science and all of those things. And what that allowed for us to do was to be able to communicate with each other quicker, faster. I love to text, The older kids that were in my house was like, why are you texting so fast? Are you upset? I was like, no, this is just what I do. But because we are a very creative generation, we often think outside of the box. Now look, for everyone that's not a millennial, you can think outside of the box too. I didn't learn until I was sober that you can break a light bulb and then smoke meth out of that. I was like, oh, that's cute to know. A little late, but cute to know, But the millennials came up with Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and all those things. We utilize those things, right? But for us, in recovery, we've kind of utilized them so that we can further our recovery journey. So everyone, almost every Oxford House chapter, and I get a lot of house requests on Facebook. And so everybody's there sharing information, talking to each other, talking about fundraisers or what house has a vacancies. You know what I'm saying? That's real cute for us, right? We have to make our own lane that works for us. Now, I like to go to AA meetings on college campuses because I think that they're very interesting. There's one called Carrier Pigeons, and it's over at Loyola. And in that meeting, it's not just your regular speaker meeting. They actually have the sponsor and the sponsee come up and share the same side of the coin that they experienced together. And then there's a Q&A after, right? So that's not your typical AA meeting, but it took a millennial to come up with an idea that would still bring in more individuals that were looking to recover, right? Young people in AA, there's YPAWs all across the country. So if you're interested in YPAW, if you just want to get with somebody who has shared your same experience because they're your same age, or if you want to help somebody that you feel is struggling and they're around your age, that would be a great opportunity for us. Going to these YPAWs, Lazy Paw, Icky Paw, all of these things. It's paw, 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 paw. You know, it's great. Also, too, at Temple Sinai on Wednesday nights in New Orleans, if you don't know, I'm from New Orleans, right? There's a young people's meeting just for the kids. You know what I'm saying? So that we can enjoy ourselves and not be looked at like kids, because we are grown men and women, even though we're young in recovery. As I said in my last panel, I want to reach for the stars because at least I'll land on the moon. And I think that's a great concept that we have as millennials, because we don't like to be told no. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to tell me what I'm not going to do. And it makes us push further and farther and faster than anyone else. I think that's kind of unique to us as addicts and alcoholics as well, because we've gone through so much. As we were just talking about, our friends are dying at an alarming rate. What can we do? How can we use our creativity to ensure no one else has to die for the rest of us to live, right? And I think that's what we have as young people. We have that drive, Don't lose your creativity. And in my next panel, I'm gonna talk about how you can use it, fun and recovery. But don't lose what you have, because you have something special. All of us have that light inside of us. And when we were using and drinking, that life was snuffed out. And we got gray, literally. Well, now I can see that the light is back. What are you going to do with that light? Who are you going to touch with that light? How are you going to allow that light to shine? And we can all learn something from each other, right? I always try to practice compassion, tolerance, and patience. And that can go for everyone, right? For a younger, older, because of course there's going to be somebody 18 coming in my house trying to mess stuff up. How am I going to meet that person? How am I going to interact with that person? I was that person. Let's not forget, we were all once that person, no matter how old we were. We were all once that person, wanting recovery, asking, begging, pleading to get into your house, then getting into the house, getting very complacent, not wanting to do shit, wanting to have everything done for us, We've all been there. So let's all go back to that space, that point, and meet that newcomer, meet that young person where they are. And for the young people, sorry. And for the young people, practice that same patience, with the older guys, with the older gals. Because most of them are just trying to help, They may not know the best ways. They may want to mother you or father you because, hey, that's what, A lot of people that I've had experiences with, a lot of older individuals in my house, they lost the opportunity to have that young person, that baby, that child in their life. And so they see you as this new opportunity to, hey, let me get in. Let me try to be, a better person to this individual in front of me. Give them that opportunity. You know what I mean? Oxford House taught me how to build healthy boundaries. And I'm very grateful for that. When I was younger and out in these streets, actually when I was older out in these streets, right? The only way that I would get with the guys, is because you had something I wanted, probably sex, money, car, whatever, right? And so I got into recovery. I didn't even know how to interact with other people, interact with other men, much less. And it gave me an opportunity to just be with another straight man or another gay man intimately, but not romantically, and actually we benefited each other's lives. I was able to grow. And so if we all give each other that opportunity to grow, I think it'll be successful for millennials or not. And so thank you for letting me share, guys.
All right, so we have about 15 minutes. There's a mic back there. If anybody wants to ask any questions, ask any of these panelists any questions. We got a few minutes. Are these mics on up there? Yeah? Okay. If there aren't any questions, we'll wrap it up.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, man.
That's a very hard question.
That is. Pterodactyl, man. Those things are as big as planes, you know? Velociraptor, those are badass.
Again, as millennials, we like to be more fashion forward, even if it's from the emo look to this. But I got it from K and G, actually. Right? Yeah. Yes, sir. You had a question. Did you have a question?
You got a question right here.
Well, I just wanted to say, man, this is probably the best panel that I've had in a long weekend, man. It's really good to see all that.
Well, thank you so much. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right, okay. My question is, my daughter is also an addict. She was in Oxford for a little bit. She's not there now. She's still doing well. She has a newborn. I guess I want to know what would be some advice that you would give to me as a mother, how to interact with her better. Since, I'm Gen X, so.
Okay, I think Raquel has something for you.
I think for that, I'm sorry. My name's Raquel. I think for that, in my experience, was definitely unconditional love and support and stuff, but also, as any other addict, is to set those boundaries right. You know, that's where I had to learn myself, is I still had to have those boundaries and be able to, change that. And but also that unconditional love and support and introducing to avenues of recovery for her. If there's any resources around your area that are good for her, that might be something good to check out as well. If there's resources, especially for young people particularly. So that too.
I like that. And going back to setting healthy boundaries, right? Because not only are you in recovery, she's now in recovery. And when you guys were not, right, those boundaries probably were very poor, right? Either enabling or not getting along, not respecting each other's individuality and autonomy. And I think in recovery, we must do that, and use all the information, the knowledge and experience that you've gained in recovery to help set those boundaries, while supporting and giving that unconditional love that Raquel was talking about. Oh, and Al-Anon. Thank you, Ajay.
Hi, my name's Linda. I have a question. We have a young girl at our house, 21, the baby. And she relapsed out of our house and went to treatment. And so now she wants to come back. We have no problem with her coming back. We love her. Her parents pay her rent and they pay for everything. I just want to know, what can we do to help her? Because she's the baby and she's been spoiled, and I'm not sure if she really have gotten it yet, but I don't know. I don't know what's in her mind or what's in her brain, but I just don't want her to just come to our house and think a slap on the wrist. So how can we help her to not relapse again? This is her second relapse. She relapsed out of one house, and then we took her into our house, and she was doing good until the boyfriend relationship came up, and then she relapsed. So now she's coming. We voted for her to come back. I just want to know, how can we, as a young person, what can we do to help her?
So I think a relapse in itself is not a slap on the wrist. I think be compassionate to what she's been going through. I personally have not relapsed in my recovery or relapsed out of an Oxford house, but I went through it with my best friend. I had to go through it with her a few different times. You can be there for her and support her, but not enable her. If her mom wants to pay her rent, make sure she's still out of the house from set times to find a job. That's why that rule is in place, so you don't have people laying on the couch, laying in bed all day. That's being a productive member of society, and that's one of the best values of an Oxford house. So that's really all you can do for her, is support her and say, we love you. You never have to use again, or whatever her, she's an addict, alcoholic. They never have to go through that again, and y'all are gonna try your hardest to make sure that she doesn't have to go through that. Be compassionate, yeah? Well, you can't technically tell her she can't see him, but what you can do is, if your house votes on it, that other person is a disruptive member to that house, or a disruptive visitor to that house, your house can vote and say, hey, they're a disruption to our house. We would like for them not to be here. But you can't tell the poor girl that she can't, or the girl that she can't see, if it's the father of her child or her boyfriend. But what you can do is set those in place. And if he's using, he is pliable. He can be drug tested at any time as well. And so if that were to happen, if he were to fail a drug test, that's a whole nother situation of where he's not really allowed in the house anyways. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm an alcoholic. So y'all were talking a lot about loss and recovery, and I have a lot of issues with like getting attached to people and then they either relapse or OD, and I'm just wondering if y'all have any like ways to not get so emotional, or like, just try to detach from people because you don't want to lose them and you're just always fearing that.
In my experience, it's never been quite healthy to try to detach because I've been hurt in the past or have had losses in the past. In my first 3 months in recovery, I lost like 3 friends, Oh, what was that? All drug overdoses and stuff. We go through loss, we go through life, and when we all come into recovery, that's part of, unfortunately losing people. But like that, we're still grateful. For me, I'm still grateful for the time that I got to spend with them and honor their memory by trying to help others come into recovery and maintain mine as well. And I think that's like one of the best ways to grow and grieve through that and process that and, try to spread that love. But it does help kind of honor that person or whoever I've lost, but I don't necessarily want to detach from the memory of that or whatever,
Probably gonna have to move back.
What do you mean? I'm pretty loud. I probably don't need the mic anyway. I can hold it this far. Oh, okay. My name's Daniel. I'm a grateful recovering addict from the great state of Texas. So many of you said something that I'm sure many of us also have heard in this room, the I'm not done yet. This isn't really a question so much as a call to action. We as millennials are unique in that we change the culture and the conversation of the environment around us. So it's our responsibility as those who are told that we're not done yet to change the conversation and to change the culture within the rooms to say, no, we can recover at any age, just like Raquel said. That's all I ended. I just wanted to. Thanks.
Hello. My name's Alan, alcoholic addict. I just had a question for Jeremy as well, or for anybody who could answer this. Being a minority, being homosexual in recovery is hard. And like, I've been in and out of the rooms for about 4 years, but I've had continuous sobriety now for 17 months. And I've hit that wall of like stagnation of like not knowing how to like trust people or like get back out there without, making bad decisions. I was just wondering, does anybody have any advice of how they kind of got over that, blockade of like not really, or kind of being fearful of like building relationships with people, or like going back out into the real world in fear of like, you know, making poor decisions and not, you know, staying true to your guns.
Absolutely. So fear is not an emotion that sustains, right? And so I like to, if I'm fearful of something, I want to walk through that. Now, with regards to building relationships and making sure that they are healthy, I think learning that from the individuals that are around you, especially in Oxford House, really assists with setting firm and healthy boundaries. You know what I'm saying? If you take some food that's not yours out of the pantry, you're going to be confronted about that. And so they're going to have a conversation with you, and then you're going to have to be receptive to what they say. You know what I'm saying? Like, just being in the house and being in recovery is going to allow for you to start building those bonds and building those healthy relationships. Also, too, building, one, a strong support system and having a sponsor that really knows what they're talking about. Like, my sponsor is Lori Holtzclaw. She's phenomenal, and she keeps me grounded. So if I have a question, or if I have a concern, or even if I've done something and I need to like kind of figure out if I need to make amends or if it was the next right thing, I'll always go to her and say, hey, so this is what I was thinking. Can you give me some feedback, or, you know, be my sounding board? And because she is a very busy woman, if she's not available, then I have other individuals in my support network that I can be like, okay, so this is what I'm trying to do. This is what my idea is. What do you think would be the best course of action? Am I thinking about this clearly? Because for us, common sense is very uncommon, right? And so the things that we used to do were never the things that we needed to do. And so now trying to get, reshape that framework, you know what I mean? And also, one, having a God consciousness. Really working steps 1 through 3 and building that relationship with your higher power. Because now if I'm doing something that I know is not right, I literally feel it in my gut. Like it feels like a disgusting experience for me. And so trusting yourself and gaining your intuition back.
I'm Raquel. They call me Rocky, so hey. My question is, I was in a house for about 90 days, and I relapsed, but then I did get right back in. You know, I got about 45 days now, but I struggle really bad with all my friends were users. How is it that you guys walk away from those people? Because I didn't have family, you know. I lived on the streets with them, and I just want to help them so bad, but it leads to my relapse almost every time. So you guys have any advice for that? My house says just like forget about him, but it's not that easy.
I'm gonna let Austin say something first, and then I'll come up to the mic for a little bit.
So in my experience, being that I lived in Bend my whole entire life, 14 years of using in the same city, I still live in Bend. You got to set healthy boundaries with those people that still use. In lieu of me setting healthy boundaries with all those people that I used to use with, I also had to avoid those hot spots across town. All the spots that I would go kick it with, people on foot, so to speak, good commute spots to go get all my substance abuse issues. The most important thing for me in my recovery when I got clean is to set those boundaries, not just setting them, but resetting them and resetting them and resetting them. These people don't understand when you're getting loaded that you're setting a boundary with them. They don't even know what a boundary is. I didn't. I had to consistently tell these people every single day for a good couple of years. Even still to this day, I run into people that I used to use with that just don't even know, and I still have to set those boundaries with them. That's the most important thing. And then the other thing is understanding your own feelings. If you're feeling down and out, don't go to those places that you're possibly going to end up in a situation where you might take something. That was the other thing, because there's always those spots across town where I have to go to that people are going to be at with those substances, and I don't do all that when I'm not feeling good, when I'm not in a good state of mind, when I'm not having, because not every time I'm going to have someone with me. So knowing and understanding yourself, and also just setting those boundaries, that's the biggest thing.
And I'll share quickly on this is from my experiences, I also stayed and got sober in the same city that I was using in. And, you know, I moved on the other side of town. I got out of those shady places, right? But I also, tapping on what was shared before, it was building also those healthy relationships and letting go of the old ones. Austin shared about letting go of those and setting those boundaries and not getting near that. But for me also was opening myself up and becoming vulnerable with the women in the, you know, in the rooms of recovery and the men in the rooms of recovery, and building these healthy friendships and relationships. And the Unity of Oxford kind of played a big part of that. So I got involved in service, I got involved in the community, and I, you know, put myself out there and became a little bit vulnerable, but it was worth it because now I have all these friendships and relationships and you know, people and family that I could never say that about my buddies that were using, you know. They're all still in the same place doing the same thing, and, you know, and now my life's on a different track with, you know, the amazing people in my life today. So it just takes time. You have to put trust and faith into it, and that's what I did.
Thanks, guys. All right, that is our time, so let's give it up for all of our panelists. And you guys enjoy the next session or lunch.